Teachers have so much on their plate. If we keep stacking and stacking and stacking and never take anything off, we are going to collapse. So today, we're going to talk about how we can actually take some things off our plate to make room for the things that matter. Welcome back to the Teach for the Heart podcast, where we tackle teaching challenges from a biblical perspective. Why are we here? Because we don't believe that our spiritual walk and teaching profession should exist in two separate domains. Rather, the hope we have in Christ should change how we approach everything, not just at home, but at school as well. So join us as we explore both the spiritual and practical sides of key teaching challenges, integrating them together so we can succeed at teaching, glorify God, and make a lasting difference in our students' hearts and lives. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. Today, we're really excited to bring back one of the older episodes out of our vault that we think will be really helpful for you as you finish this year and head into the next. So let's dive right in.
If you're a teacher right now, chances are you're pretty busy. There's more to do than you feel like you have time for, and you might even find yourself not getting done everything you want to get done. And one of the remedies for this is to actually identify things to stop doing or to do less of. The truth is, as teachers, we are often adding things to our plate, but rarely do we stop and look for things to take off. And if you think about that for more than 2 seconds, you realize that's a recipe for disaster, right? We're just going to get busier if we don't take things off in equal portion or more portion to what we put on. Now, back in episode 159, we talked about taming your to-do list with the 4 T's. And the concept is this. It's that you write down everything that's on your to-do list, whether they're just things you have to do now or things you do repetitively. And then for every item, you decide, you look for things that you're going to trash, which means you just stop doing it. Trim, which means you do have to do it, but you do it less often, or you set boundaries around it. Transfer, which means you get someone to help you with it, which, yes, that is possible, or treasure, meaning it's valuable and you're going to keep doing it and you're going to value it. So every single item on your to-do list, you'd go through and say, is this a trash, a trim, a transfer, or a treasure? And it's a really great exercise to help just do what I just said, where you're saying, okay, I have to take something off my plate. I literally can't get all of this done. So what I want to do today is kind of build on that. So if you haven't listened to episode 159, I recommend maybe even going back and listening to that either before this episode or after this episode, because what I'm going to do here is give you some examples of things that teachers have stopped doing, things that teachers are doing less or less often, and things that teachers have transferred and gotten other people to help with them. So these are examples. Please keep in mind, when I give you this example list, I'm not saying that you should stop doing all of these things. Very few of us could stop doing all of these things and still be effective. But they are examples of things that teachers have stopped doing and still been effective. And in some cases, even more effective. So what you're looking for is inspiration from this list. Okay, this is not, like I said, something where I want you to exactly follow and stop doing every single thing I say here. You're looking for a few things that you're like, I could stop doing that too, or I could do that less often, or I could get someone to help me with that. Okay, you're looking for a few things that you can remove from your to-do list. And then also inspiration. Maybe this will, spark something in your head and say, ooh, what about this? What about this? What about this? Okay. So these are examples, and I hope that you will find them helpful. So first set we're going to go through, these are examples of things that teachers have stopped doing. Just stopped. Okay. First one is correcting students' work. So in other words, rather than collecting papers or tests and actually going through and putting all the correct answers. You just don't put the correct answers on students' tests, realizing you can have them do that themselves or even have that as an assignment. Number 2, extra roles that their heart is not in. So responsibilities at school or at home or at church that you said yes to kind of out of guilt and now realize, no, that's actually not the best use of my time. Some teachers have even stopped giving and grading homework altogether. They don't give homework at all. I'm not saying everyone should do that, but some teachers have done that and found themselves still being really effective. Number 4, Making PowerPoints. So some teachers have said, you know what? I'm not making PowerPoints anymore. It's too much of a time suck. It's not necessary. I'm not going to do it. Number 5, video editing. So if you're making videos for your class, rather than spending all this time editing them so that they're quote unquote perfect, just leaving the mistakes in, like letting them be more raw and simple. Next one, changing bulletin boards or classroom decor. This is definitely one I embraced. I decorated my classroom at the beginning of the year, and then I didn't change it very much at all. Just let it be. Some teachers have said they used to keep a paper gradebook as a backup, and they've stopped keeping a paper gradebook backup. Just have the one gradebook. Here's an example from home, and that's something I want to encourage you with as well is when you're looking at this, don't just think about school, also think about your personal life. Because, I mean, it's your life, right? They all flow into each other. So one example is grocery shopping. Some teachers have decided to use Instacart or something similar to do grocery shopping for them. So those are all examples of things that teachers have stopped doing. And remember, as I said, I'm not telling you to stop doing all of those, but I hope your mind is expanding a little bit already. Some of these things you might think, I could never stop doing that. But maybe you could. That's what I want you to start asking yourself. What if I just didn't do this? Particularly look at the things that are most time consuming for you and ask, what if I didn't do that? Is there another way to be just as effective without taking so much time? And it's kind of amazing what some teachers have been able to cut out without it affecting how effective they are. The next section that we're going to go through are things that you can do less. And this, in some cases, is a little bit easier than just saying I'm stopping it altogether. You can identify areas where, okay, I can do this way less often. So here's some examples. Grading. Oh my goodness. This one is a huge example. If you are grading everything in particular, you have to stop grading everything that you do. Definitely not a good idea. You can definitely, almost every teacher can look for ways to grade less unless you're already cut down to the bare minimum. So ask yourself, if you grade, let's say every homework assignment, ask yourself, could I grade half the homework assignments instead of all of them? Same thing for classwork, same thing for lots of things. Say, can I grade half of this and still have an accurate grade representation? If yes, do it. Another thing is emails. So rather than checking emails 10 times a day, teachers have said, I'm going to check it once a day, or I'm going to check it twice a day. That's my email time. Also removing email from your phone. So you're not on there in the evening or saying, I'm not checking it over the weekend. Those are some ways to cut down on time and energy spent on email. Social media is something that a lot of teachers have identified as doing less. That's not necessarily something on your to-do list, but it is a huge time suck. So kind of putting boundaries around, this is the time I'm spending on social media, and that's it. Another thing that some teachers have done less often is a classroom newsletter, which I would actually say some teachers have stopped doing this altogether. I don't send a newsletter anymore, but some have said, okay, rather than every week, I can do it every other week. So that's something you might consider about. Lesson planning is obviously a huge area that can take up a lot of time. So there's a lot of ways that you can look to spend less time on lesson plans. But one simple tip, I guess I could almost do a whole nother podcast just on lesson planning, but one tip is using a timer in such a way where you'd say, okay, I have, 55 minutes or whatever it is to accomplish this plan, however much it is. I believe that's a reasonable amount of time. I believe I can do it in that amount of time, and I'm going to. I need to be done by the time this timer goes off. When we do that, this doesn't work for everybody, but for a lot of people, this is really helpful. Just kind of giving yourself that deadline of I have to be done in this amount of time can really force our mind to focus and actually get done and not get distracted, because sometimes we go down rabbit holes that are not helpful. So simply using a timer, giving yourself a deadline to get stuff done, can be really helpful in keeping it in its place and taking up less time, trimming it down. PowerPoints also go here too. We talked about some teachers have said, I don't do PowerPoints anymore. Some teachers have chosen to spend less time on PowerPoints by still having them, but making them much simple versus elaborate. So rather spending all this time, with the animations and all this craziness, just being nope, I'm just going to put the bare bones of what needs to be there. I'm not going to spend time, making it super elaborate. The last example I have here is one from the home, and that is if you cook dinner on a regular basis, you can make 2-day meals. This is my personal example. A lot of times I will make a meal, and we don't call it leftovers. We call it a 2-day meal. I said this meal is for Monday and Wednesday, or for Thursday and Sunday, or whatever it is. And that's how it works. I make double the amount, which takes a little longer, but definitely not as long as making 2 different meals. And then when that day comes, I just reheat it, or just, prepare a couple new sides or whatever it is. It saves a lot of time and stress in the home front.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation, and we want to in particular recommend Herzog's trainings for Christian school administrators and teachers. They have so many amazing free trainings, many of which are online and others that are in person. The great thing is that they're all completely free, and the in-person events even include free lodging. So you definitely want to check out their full catalog of upcoming trainings and events. You'll even find some on there that we at Teach for the Heart are doing together with Herzog. So check them all out at herzogfoundation.com and click events at the top of their page. Now back to our program. All right, so far we've gone through some examples of things that teachers have stopped doing altogether. They've just trashed it. Second, we've talked about things that teachers are doing less often or spending less time on. That's called trimming. And the last one is transferring, which means getting people to help you with it. And I'm excited. I have actually a ton of examples of things that teachers have told me that they have gotten students or parents or various paras or whatever it is to help with. So here's some ideas, okay? First of all, tutoring. You can sometimes get parent volunteers or older students to help tutor students in your class. Your class weekly newsletter is something that you might be able to hand off to a parent, or depending on the age of your student, probably, this is more of an elementary thing, so probably we need to be a parent or a paraprofessional. But could you train a parent or paraprofessional to do your weekly newsletter? Number 3, grading. If you have a para or a teacher's assistant, or in a lot of cases, students can often grade smaller things. I know I almost always had my students grade homework or classwork or things like that. They would exchange and grade, and then I just have to look over it real quickly rather than actually looking at every single one. Cleaning the classroom is something that definitely your students can do. You can put procedures in place, which let me pause for just a moment and talk about this. When you think about getting help, we talk about this in great detail in our Tame Your To-Do List program and in our mentorship as well. But the key is training someone, okay? And this is maybe a good time to just say we have our Tame Your To-Do List system is coming up. And in that, we go into a lot of details about how you can effectively delegate things to others, because it does it without it taking a lot of your time and without it being stressful, okay? So I don't have time to go into all of that right now. But the point is you really can train people to do something. The key is like just having a process, teaching them what to do, and then having the same person do it repetitively. Because the first time or two that they do it, it's probably not going to really save you that much time, because you have to tell them what to do, and then you have to check over it and like tell them what to do differently. But the third, the fourth time they do it, now they're getting the hang of it. And then if they can do it for the full year, then it really saves you time. So just a thought there that same thing with students. If you're teaching your students to clean the classroom, the first time or two you do it, you might feel like, oh, this is not going to work. But if you stick with it and teach the procedure to them, it can really save tons of time in the long run. So with anything you transfer, keep in mind, it's a little bit of a time investment up front, but it can pay huge dividends in the long haul. Okay, back to our list. Next one is decorating the classroom. So we talked before about simply, not decorating the classroom very much, but another option is to transfer that to students or to parent volunteers, right? And say, hey, you're in charge of this bulletin board, or you're in charge of putting up the good example work, or whatever it is. If your classroom has a lot of setting up, tearing down, or you have to set up like labs or projects, that is something that can be assigned to, once again, same thing, students, paraprofessional, parent volunteers.
Planning class field trips or parties is something that a parent volunteer may be able to do. That's definitely something. In my kids' school, they have room moms that plan all the parties for the year. So all the classroom parties, the teachers don't plan any of them. The room mom plans it and coordinates with the other parents. So that's a huge relief for the teachers to not have to worry about that. But I could imagine some teachers have also worked with parents to help plan field trips and a lot of the administrative details for that too. Making copies is another thing that students, in some cases, if it's not a test, students could help with, or a parent. You might be able to have a parent come in and make copies for you. If you do a lot with small groups or Zoom groups, it's another opportunity for a prayer professional, a teacher's assistant, or a parent to help monitor those groups. Creating review games is something that students can help with in many cases, as your students are a little bit older. So rather than, let's say you want to put together a Kahoot review game or whatever review game, you could have students come up with the questions or put that together. You can even have that be like the first part of your review is here's a 3x5 card for everyone. I want everyone to write down 2 questions, and you can use that for your review game. And then we talked again about the home. So are there household jobs that you could transfer to someone else in your home, whether it's a spouse, a roommate, if you have children that are of age to be able to help? Is everyone involved? Is the home all your responsibility, or are they involved too? So you can kind of have a family meeting and talk about that. Things like cooking dinner, cleaning the house, laundry, grocery shopping again, right? Couple other final answers of transferring. Classroom library organization. A lot of teachers have had success assigning a student or 2 to be in charge of organizing the classroom library. And finally, answering the classroom phone. I love this idea. You know how the phone is always interrupting sometimes throughout the day. One teacher said they have a student that's trained to answer the phone in the classroom and then to relay the message. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to these ideas of things that maybe you can stop doing or spend less time on to save time. And if you like one of these ideas but are nervous about actually trying it, remember you can always try it as an experiment, which means you can say, hey, I'm going to try this for a week or 2 and see what happens. So we encourage you to do that. If you'd like to check out this list, you can look at this list at our blog at teachfortheheart.com/330. That's teachfortheheart.com/330. And if you'd like more help with saving time, I want to invite you to a free training, 5 time-saving practices to stop feeling overwhelmed. It's on demand. You can watch anytime that's convenient for you. Simply head to teachfortheheart.com/savetime. That's teachfortheheart.com/savetime to sign up for this free training, 5 time-saving practices to stop feeling overwhelmed. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do share it with a friend and subscribe to this podcast. That really helps us reach more teachers. And once again, you can share this episode easily at teachfortheheart.com/330. This episode has been brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. All views and opinions are our own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Herzog Foundation. Thank you so much for being with us. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. In the meantime, teacher, remember, God is at work in you and through you, and He's using you to make a difference. Keep your eyes on Him and teach for the heart.